Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Today I'm going to start going through my version of the top 100 players in the NFL. Last week the NFL started to air their version of the list, one that of course the players vote on. I'm going to go through my first 10 in this video and then critique their list, which thus far hasn't been too bad. I'm going to keep doing that as the show airs. Was hoping to do this a little bit earlier. I'm also going to do players through 90 to 81 today, and hopefully 80 to 71 as well, before I critique the equivalent of that tomorrow. So we'll hop straight on in. So the players list, player 100 was Joey Bosa, the defensive end for the Chargers. I'm fine with him making the list, absolutely. He was dominant last season. He was one of the most disruptive players in all of football, and for that reason my issue is, why is he so low on the list? I know he missed a few games because of the holdout, but once he got on the field he was an absolute menace. I think he was arguably one of the most dominant defenders in all of football. I mean, he really did look like the best player in the entire Chargers lineup, and they had some defenders that also had good seasons. So he will be showing up in my list, I can guarantee you that, but it will be significantly higher than 100. At least he made it. That's the one saving grace of this. Myself, going to be honest, maybe could be deemed a bit of a homer pick at 100. I have gone for Jameis Winston, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback. Now, one of my mates immediately said, why is Mariota not on the list? He's a guy who's been doing the graphics for it. And why is Jameis on above him? My logic there is simply that the Titans had a superior team, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, to assist. Both of these players won 9 games. Mariota got injured, missed a couple of games once again. But I don't think Mariota had the same amount of responsibility in terms of carrying the team. The Titans' offensive line was fantastic, got superb protection, particularly from the tackles, who you will likely see on this list. Possibly one of the top 3 offensive lines in all of football. As a result, they had a great run game. DeMarco Murray had a fantastic season. He got some decent support as well from Derrick Henry. The receiving group isn't bad. Delaney Walker's a very, very good tight end. Not necessarily the best production outside. That should improve in future. So I think Mariota had a lot of help. Defense was a bit better than I think the Bucs for the most part as well. Whereas Jameis, he had to win games with, at times, very little support. Mike Evans had a fantastic season, but beyond that, Cameron Brate is okay. He was fine. Vincent Jackson got injured again. The offensive line was not good in pass protection. All the running backs got injured. Didn't play great when they were in. Jaquiz was okay, I suppose. But stagnant run game. Poor offensive line. A defence that for the first half of the season was, for the most part, very, very poor. They started to turn it around mid-season. But in spite of all that, Jameis Winston went on to have a 4,000-yard season. Of course, he does turn the ball over far too much. Makes some decisions that shouldn't be made. To say the least, some bonehead turnovers. You hope they will go, but you can see the leadership, and he really did carry this team to that amount of wins. I mean, as a player, you can see, not conservative at all, throws the ball downfield as much as anyone, even if his statistics doing so weren't great, but really carried this team. The reason the Buccaneers had 9 wins last year is Jameis Winston managing to create offense at times where there wasn't any, which was to the team's detriment at times. Some of those turnovers stemmed from those kinds of plays, but for that reason I think he has to make this list. This team is considered an up and coming team, and Jameis Winston is the primary reason for that. So for that reason he makes the list just ahead of Mariota, who was strongly considered for the lower tier of this list. So there we go. Maybe a little bit of a home pick. I will understand that critique, but I think if you watch the tape and you see how little support he had as opposed to Mariota, that's my justification for this. Next up on the players list was Malcolm Butler, the cornerback for the Patriots. That's perfectly reasonable. Again, I think he should have been higher. I think he was one of the top corners in all of football last year. Maybe still not the biggest name, in spite of, I suppose this off-season will have helped that with all the wrangling, but I thought he was very, very tough of last year. Of course, he gets some help in that scheme. He may not be, as physically gifted as, a guy like Patrick Peterson, who they're going to leave one-on-one on the island, but really does not give up much, plays the run well, is an asset to that team. And in spite of them bringing in Stephon Gilmore on quite a large contract, I would be surprised if Butler is not still the number one in New England next year. I think he had a very good season all around, doesn't give up too many big plays, competes as hard as anyone at that position, is an asset in the run game, more than you'd think. I think this is too low, but again, the only positive I can give the players, at least he made the list, but I do think he should have been significantly higher. For me, at 99, you'll see this is a bit of a theme in these first couple of episodes. Some of the top players in the league who had seasons that were derailed by injury. So I have Earl Thomas III, the Seattle Seahawks free safety. I don't think, even when he was on the field this year, he was playing at his highest level. I don't know if there were some nagging injuries for that. He was still, very good. Still, changes the way that defense plays. We saw what happened once he was missing. I think that was one of the primary reasons I felt I had to get him on the list. But of course, he did miss too many games to be too much higher than this. And as I say, I do feel we've seen him play at a higher level. Of course, the way he plays, simply the deep third or deep middle third safety the majority of the time in that cover 3 scheme. His range allows him to do that very effectively. Of course, a combination of range and great studying. You've got to have wonderful study habits and knowledge and understanding of the game, knowing your reads, having a good idea of how the offense is going to try and attack you each week in order to play that position to a high level. He does that possibly better than anyone in the league at this point in time. Really good tackler. We'll miss a few, but he's not the biggest guy in the world. Occasionally going for like the kill shot. It's a tough one, but I think he tends to be quite situationally aware with when to go for the kill shot. Whilst he will do it, he will not do it when he's the last man. So to say, if he knows there's some support, he can maybe, I wouldn't say afford to miss the tackle, but there is some backup there, then he tends to go for that a bit more. One of my favourite players to watch in the league. I wish I could have put him higher on the list. I just feel that I couldn't. But again, the biggest testament to Earl Thomas, seeing how this defense played without him there, you really get the impression that in terms of the secondary, Earl is the guy that holds that all together, not just in terms of what he offers on the field, but also in terms of the leadership, making sure everyone understands what's going on, communicating on a down by down basis, and I think that can't be overstated. So Earl Thomas at 99 for me. I'm sure he'll be on the players list, and he'll probably be quite high because of the name recognition that comes with that. So next up on the players list was Adrian Peterson. So whilst I have got some players who were injured last season on my list, I wouldn't have put Peterson on there. The players I put on here that got injured had some kind of contribution and tend to have the past history. I think that is a fair way of getting them on. A guy who played in 3 games combined, I guess 1 full game and 2 partial games, and did not perform well in those games, which isn't all down to him. The Vikings offensive line was atrocious. I couldn't put him on this list. I'm not going to doubt Adrian Peterson. I've been on record. I've said it. I would not be shocked if he gets the number 1 job in New Orleans next year. Plays very well and puts up over 1,000 yards. Would not be surprising to me at all. At the end of the day, it's Adrian Peterson. Even if he is 32 and coming off another injury, it wouldn't be shocking. However, based on what I saw last year, I can't put him on the list. He barely played. When he did play, he was not good. So I think there was no reason to have him on that list outside of respect and all that stuff. For me, my number 98, and some may say this is a bit low, and that might be true. Dak Prescott, the quarterback for the Cowboys. Now, Dak was fantastic. One of the best rookie campaigns you will ever see from a quarterback. Protected the ball very well. This is kind of like the argument I made about Mariota earlier. Dak was great at what he was asked to do. He was not asked to do an enormous amount. The offensive line and Ezekiel Elliott pretty much carried the offense through the vast majority of the season. Dak made plays here and there when he had to, was very effective when he was asked to, but even when he was, it didn't tend to involve too many high difficulty throws. It was a lot of short, intermediate stuff. Again, I don't want to have him down this low simply because of he was playing an Alex Smith style. I have said he was basically like the best version of Alex Smith last season, and I don't mean that as a criticism, just as a way of expressing this is the style of offense that he was operating and running. A very low risk, kind of dinky dunk passing game, and that's fine. It's just I think you've got to do a little bit more for me to get higher up on this list. Everything he was asked to do, he did at a high level. We can see he's got a good arm, good mobility. I mean, just about every physical tool you could want, you can see in his play. Next year, when I'm sure we'll see him making more reads, going through deeper progressions, taking more snaps where he's going to have to figure out a coverage and attack it appropriately, doing stuff at the line of scrimmage. These are things we didn't see him doing, and once he does, if he does them as well, then he could be right up there. So Dak Prescott coming in at 98 can easily rise higher up this list. Moving on to 97. I've got to say I kind of regret mine. I should have been higher, but that's fine. Here's what it is now. In the players list, they had David DeCastro, the guard for the Steelers. Glad to see him on the list. He had a great season. That guard pairing were fantastic. Especially blocking for Le'Veon Bell can't be the easiest thing in the world. Certainly doesn't run like you draw plays up, but man was he good run blocking this year. Very athletic. I was super high on him when he was coming out of college. I think this is the first year where we've truly seen that potential maximised from him. They used him as a lead blocker on a lot of plays where they'd have him, pulling outside, and he's very effective at getting his hands on guys in those situations. I think this was, considering the players list tends not to value linemen too highly, or there tend not to be as many on there, especially the interior linemen. I'm just glad to see that he made the list. So I think he should be higher up, but hey, much like most of them, glad he made it. He made mine, so I'll go into a bit more detail on him later once we get to that point. So mine, I kind of forgot about this guy and was getting toward the end of the list. Probably should have redid it a little. Jordan Howard, the running back for the Bears, definitely should have been higher. This one's on me, so I don't know, maybe bump him up about 40 spots mentally, possibly even more than that. He was superb last year on a poor team. Whilst their O-line is pretty good on the interior, good pair of guards, Cole Long was missing for a large chunk of the season. Howard did everything well. It's amazing how far he fell in the draft considering how productive he was. Good catch, was surprisingly effective and proficient in pass blocking, runs with real power, has enough quickness to make guys miss. I mean, really you saw a little bit of everything from his game. I think were it not for Ezekiel Elliott having the season that he did, Jordan Howard would have got far more plaudits. Unfortunately, it was a bad team that he was on, and then you had another rookie running back essentially taking that spotlight on a far more successful team. But it can't be said enough. Jordan Howard was superb. I mean, to produce the way he did on a team that really had very little passing game to speak of course, were riding the quarterback carousel for large chunks of the season. This guy really did more than what anyone could have expected from him, even where he drafted incredibly highly. To get that kind of production out of a player is fantastic. I've definitely got him rated too low. I will hold my hands up there. He should be higher up on this list. But yeah, Jordan Howard, it would appear one of the best young running backs in the league. He should be good for a long time. I mean, it's really hard to say like what he doesn't do well. He was just that effective. I mean, yeah, what a season. Great job from him. So the players list, moving on to 96. I was happy to see this guy make it. They had no choice really. He played his way on. Again, a player that should have been higher up on the list. Damon Snacks Harrison, the nose tackle for the New York Giants. Man, this guy is good. He was really good in New York, and I think, with the Jets, I say, the other New York team. Yeah, he was great when he was there. I think maybe he didn't get the plaudits because he had two high-profile, first-round picks alongside him there. And generally they were pretty good defensively, so it was maybe a bit of a chicken and the egg situation. Well, put paid to that this year by having the best season of his career. I mean, he was exceptional at making run stuffs all over the place. So glad to see him on there. He's on my list, and I'll discuss him more once I get there. But again, glad he made it. Should have been higher up. For me, 96, much like with Earl Thomas, similar situation here. Tyrann Mathieu, was really debating him not getting here. I thought he had an okay season, not much more than that. Clearly not the same coming off the injury he suffered during the previous year, where he was legit defensive MVP candidate. Had he had a season like that this year, when I don't think there was as clear a winner, then I think he'd have been a shoo-in. What to say about Tyrann Mathieu? Yeah, last year just didn't seem to have the same burst to his game. When I think of Tyrann Mathieu at his best, it's arriving very suddenly, always around the ball, putting big hits on guys, breaking up passes, playing far beyond his stature. Incredibly physical player, and just he was everywhere. Last year that wasn't so much. I think if anything, Tony Jefferson outshone him last year. Some of this is just hoping to see him back to his best. He got some help there in Budda Baker. I think they may use him a little more conservatively while they blood in a rookie next year. So it will certainly be interesting to see if Tyrann Mathieu can reclaim that form. If not, frankly, I don't know if he'd make the list again next year. This one, again, this is just because I really like this player. So I think this one's one of mine that can be critiqued for sure. But hopefully we get the original Honey Badger back. Because when he's playing, that like he was that season, he was a lot of fun to watch and an absolute menace. It must have been a nightmare for offences, because you didn't know what he was going to do. He line up all over the place. They even use him at corner sometimes. He played in the nickel very, very effectively. So hopefully we get to see that Swiss Army knife back playing dominant football again next season. Pick 95 on the players list. Another guard. I think they're going to burn through their guards in the first 20-30 picks, and then we won't see any more. So Kelechi Osemele, the guard for the Raiders. Again, he had to make the list. I thought he was dominant. He mauled people last year. He made some guys look bad. In the video, they clearly made emphasis on playing up the KO nickname. He certainly earned it last year. He absolutely punished guys. His line was very, very good. Him and Donald Penn, Rodney Hudson, all having exceptional seasons. Yeah, they got this one right. He'll be on my list. I'll go into a bit more detail about him once I get there. On my list, pick 95, again, keeping up the injured players theme, Justin Houston. When he came back, he was effective. Wasn't quite, the superhuman force. I think Houston, when he's been on, is on the same kind of level as Khalil Mack and Von Miller. Those are I think he's a premier player at the position. We saw some of it. Still, ferocious pass rusher. He plays the run very, very, very well as well. They use him. He can come inside on stunts very effectively. Take on guards. He's a lot stronger than he would appear. He's also got speed to beat a guy around the edge, but it's mainly the power. He's got a very, very effective ball rush. And again, if we'd seen it over the course of the whole season, he would be far higher up this list. I thought he did play well when he came back. Clearly a bit rusty, but still effective. I think this is one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. The term relentless is used to describe just about every pass rusher. This is one of the guys that really is. You don't see him taking plays off, and he attacks the run just as effectively, which is something I really value in my edge players. I want them to love playing the run as much as they love getting the quarterback, and this is a guy that does that. Sets the edge really well. It doesn't always look like he should, because he doesn't look, especially compared to a lot of the tackles that he ends up taking on, doesn't look like he should be able to handle it as well as he does. So one of my favourites, and I'm sure he'll be higher on the list next year if he can stay healthy. Next up, number 94 on the players list, Dont'a Hightower. He didn't crack my list, and I have a lot of respect for Hightower. He's a player I really like his role within that defense. Makes a few splash plays, but I don't think he's such a key cog in that defense in terms of the way they play on the field. In terms of getting them lined up, making sure everyone understands what's going on, making the adjustments and stuff. Absolutely, he is the leader of that defense. But when I watch that team, he is not the most outstanding player on the field. I can understand why he made the list, especially with the big play in the Super Bowl. He was great on mic'd up for that Super Bowl. I just think his play is smarter than it is athletic. They use him all kinds of ways. It's very he's kind of one of the moving pieces of the Belichick defense. But I just think there are linebackers that over the course of the whole season, I think, made more of an impact on each game they were involved in. Sorry, Dont'a, love you, but you wouldn't have made my list. Myself, pick 94. I had another Patriot, keeping up with this injury theme, Rob Gronkowski. No doubt, when healthy, the best tight end in the league, best tight end I've seen, does everything well, blocks incredibly well, and down the seam is nigh unstoppable. I'm not frankly sure how you're meant to try and match up with him. When he's there, Brady looks a far more dangerous vertical thrower. See, the offense, when he's not there, becomes incredibly dinky dunk, slant and drag and like little ins and outs oriented, which is fine. Brady's great at doing that, and he's got some great receivers at executing. When Gronk is there, this team is far more dangerous because he gives them that vertical threat that Brady trusts on those crosses, those seam routes, anything that's basically once there's a linebacker on Rob Gronkowski, that's where this team is going to be looking to go. Missed most of the season when he was there. He was Gronk, so it dominated. If he can stay healthy, he'll be very, very high on the list next year. And moving on to pick 93, Brandon Graham making it on the players list. Yeah, this guy's very good. He's flown under the radar for a while. Of course, he was a first round pick. The reason he's flown under the radar is he does not get many sacks. Well, sacks are an overrated statistic. They will get you paid, but although we have seen a shift towards some of the guys who aren't necessarily getting the numbers but are playing very, very well. Look at Melvin Ingram with the Chargers this off-season for an example of that. Yeah, very glad he made it. Higher on my list, I think he's one of the best edge players in the league. Again, he's certainly in that sort of top 5 or 6 player consideration for 4-3 edge rushers, possibly even higher than that. Plays the run very well. Again, you're not going to see too many one-dimensional pass rushers on my list, I'm afraid. It's just one of those. To be one of my top 100 players, you've got to be able to play both phases of the game, and he does that. The amount of pressures that this guy gets is frankly incredible. Sorry about that. Seems to always be in the quarterback's face, whether it's not necessarily beating an offensive lineman clean. He seems to battle his way there, fights through blocks. He's got not the best array of moves. Maybe again that's a contributing factor to not getting all of the sacks. But the amount of big plays that are made where he's just in the vicinity and the quarterback is aware of it and has to do what they don't want to do, or they get hit as they're releasing the ball. I would often rather have a hit on a quarterback as he's throwing than an actual sack, because that's far more likely to go horribly wrong for an offense. We see that a lot with Graham. Leads to these things lead to interceptions. I think he's massively underrated. He'll be on my list. Again, I'll go into a bit more detail about him then, even though I think I probably did a bit too much on him there. Oh well. Number 93 on my list is Amari Cooper, the wide receiver for the Raiders. He could have been higher. I think some people will be surprised by this. I think he faded toward the end of the season. There are just some games where he doesn't seem to do much. Now, bear in mind, I was in Tampa last year seeing him go off against the Buccaneers. I think he had nearly 200 yards in that game. He may even have had 200. Either way, ridiculously productive. But there were other games where that was not the case. He felt very feast or famine over the course of the season. He's a great route runner. Maybe doesn't quite get into the end zone enough. Crabtree's clearly the preferred target in the red zone. But yeah, he can do everything quite well. I think he is your prototypical route running number 1 type receiver in the mould of an AJ Green, and yeah, he does that job very well. It's just sometimes, I don't know, you do see some drops from time to time. It's quite often in young players. I think again, we saw it. Mike Evans was a great example of this in year 2, where he just a bunch of concentration drops. It's not necessarily having bad hands, it's getting your head around and looking to what you're going to do next. That leads to a lot of drops, and we saw that with Cooper a bit this year. His route running and general quickness sort of separate him from most young receivers. As I say, AJ Green type upside, great athlete, good after the catch. Just would like to see him develop that bit more consistency. I think that's the only thing missing from his game at this point in time. But yeah, him and Derek Carr are going to be besties for a while, one would think. So number 92 on the players list, Everson Griffin. This is one of the guys who just about didn't make the cut for me. Definitely glad to see him on the players list. Didn't think I would. Yeah, he's ferocious for the Vikings. Very, very glad he did. Remember him falling in the draft. There was a time where he was going to be being talked about as one of the top pass rushers in the draft. Turns out those initial theories were correct. He's not the flashiest edge rusher you'll ever see. It's certainly effective, and again plays the run well. So it was a tough cut not getting him on my list, especially when I saw him on the players list. I was like, man, I'm surprised. That's one of the guys I was considering. I didn't think he'd make their version. So yeah, sorry about that, Vikings fans. He possibly should have made it over Jameis. I made the homer call. My bad. Number 92 on my list again. We'll go in with the injury thing. Rashad Jones, the Dolphin safety. This guy's flown under most people's radar because the Dolphins haven't been very good for a while. Last year they finally were good, and he missed most of the season with injury. Stuffs the stat sheet, does basically everything well. Runs, hits, as very effective in coverage, a lot more so than you'd think. He's one of the players. He doesn't look particularly fast, but seems to always be in the right place, regularly breaking up passes, making interceptions. They use him as a blitzer. Gets an absurd amount of tackles for loss. He's very good at attacking the run game for a safety, almost linebacker-like in terms of his ability to, key in on gaps and then shoot through them. It's an incredible skill that, and a lot of safeties I think wouldn't necessarily have the stones to do it as often as he does. But he's a sure tackler when he does get to guys. So he had to make my list. This is exactly what I'm looking for in a modern safety. A guy that can do everything to an above average level. Just a shame that his season was cut short, especially with the Dolphins. Hopefully they are going to continue with their success. Then he can become a bit more of a household name. But this is a top player who's been unknown for a bit too long for my liking. So he would have certainly been higher had he stayed healthy all year. Moving in on to pick 91, and the last player I'm going to discuss in this video, the players list, Lorenzo Alexander. Certainly not made mine. I like him making it in terms of a guy who's been in the league for a long time and very well respected, very great guy to have in the locker room, and he finally had a significant statistical season that you can throw out there. And I mean, what was it? Oldest player to ever record his first double-digit sack season. Part of the reason he wouldn't have made mine is I think it's looking ahead to next season as well. I want players that were great last season that I think will maintain next year, which is why there's a lot of these injured players that have made my list. And especially with Rex being gone, I'm not sure that happens again. May have been a bit of a one-off, a bit of a freaky season. So that's my reasoning behind it. My player number 91 is Delanie Walker, the tight end for the Titans. Again, the Titans have been really bad up until last season. So ever since he left San Fran, he's been there toiling away as their number one receiver. And he's been great, going over 1,000 yards each year. Run blocks really well. I mean, this is a complete tight end, and there aren't many of them in the league at the moment. There's a lot of these great receiving tight ends. Now, Delanie Walker's not the flashiest when he gets the ball in his hands. Not Jordan Reed fast, anything like that. Doesn't exactly have a huge amount of moves, but runs routes really well. Catches just about everything. He is their number one wideout, number one option in the receiving game, even to this point. And as I say, great blocker. So he's going to make my list as long as he's putting up those kind of numbers, blocking like he does. He'll be on it every single year. Really has flown hugely under the radar. I mean, Niners must regret letting him go. I mean, Vernon Davis was in his prime there, but he's fell off massively, whereas Delanie Walker's, he's been what a wonderful signing that was for the Titans. He has been superb there. Really, outside of the maybe a bit of a lack of explosiveness that stops him being a Gronkowski type threat, or one of the true, I was going to say true receiving threats, but he is a receiving threat. But it's kind of like watching Jason Witten operate at the minute, where it's just understanding holes in zones, having those quick little moves that will just create enough separation. You're not going to see him, burning a safety with straight line speed. It's going to be, route running and savvy that get Delanie Walker open. He does it incredibly well. Great hands. Yeah, he's been wonderful for them, so he deservedly makes the list. So there we have it. There's the first 10 players on my list. Not too aggrieved, to be honest, at the players list. Only real one I don't necessarily get, and well, I really disagree with Renzo Alexander, but even then that's not too bad. On the Peterson one, which again I gave my reasons for. I wanted like my injured players. There was some contribution from them last season. There's no reason to believe that they're gonna. The one I probably feel iffiest about I did in that regard was Tyrann Mathieu. I absolutely should have had Jordan Howard higher. I apologise for that. So yeah, I'm sure the players this is going to annoy me a lot more as things go on. I do stand by a lot of these players should have been higher up. I think they often say this list, or I've heard it said that with this list it's normally like 1 or 2 years behind on field production. I think you can probably see that with Damon Harrison and Brandon Graham in particular. There are a lot, and possibly even Assembly. The Bosa one, Bosa was way too low, so I'm not happy with that. But once the O linemen start drying up and I realise what linemen they're not going to have on the list, that'll be when I can start complaining a lot. But as always, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think, and feel free to shoot me your list, and I'll critique them as well if you wish. Do it through the comments section below. Find us Cover Zero on Facebook, or find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. I'll be more than happy to respond to each and every one who does make contact. It's always fun talking ball, especially very subjective lists such as this one. Check out some more of the videos. I'll be getting a reaction video out the following day after each episode of Top 100, and I'll be continuing on with my list. This week, going back to some of my more, I suppose, unique content. I've got Cover Who on Wednesday. Tune in for that to find out which under the radar forgotten talent I'll be discussing, and also I'll be talking about the Niners quarterback quandary on Thursday. So that'll be going over what options they have going into next year to try and fix that position. So check those out. As always, like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. Be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and go Bucks.